Welcome back to Movies TV Mad, and you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to Mick, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to the greatest, most iconic person in the freaking world. I'm 49 years old today. I never worry about getting older or maybe dying of old age or anything like that, mostly because there's nothing you can do about it. I'm at the peak of my powers. The way I react to people on social media, I'm on time, I know what I'm doing, I know how to disperse the hate from the entertainment industry and against our agenda, and it's great. So, on today's DCEU Daily, big news, because for once the entertainment industry does something good. Brendan Fraser has been cast as Firefly in the Batgirl movie, and I'm so happy for Brendan. And Brendan Fraser was an A-list actor, doing movies like The Mummy, etc., etc. He was a beautiful, good-looking, talented actor, and then he was sexually harassed by a woman. Yes, women can sexually harass men as well. When he reported it, she destroyed his career, destroyed him. He left the industry. Obviously, we see what he looks like now. That's part of what she did to him. He came back, and he returned in DC's Doom Patrol. So very exciting that he's back in DC again while still playing the same character in Doom Patrol, where he's done a fabulous job, by the way, as Firefly in the Batgirl movie. So let's get some details on this. Batgirl movie cast Brendan Fraser in villain role. Brendan Fraser has been cast in a villain role for the DC HBO Max Batgirl movie, starring Leslie Grace and directed by Aldi El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, by Paul Cherie of Screen Rant. Update 2. It's now being confirmed that Fraser will indeed play the villain Firefly. Stay tuned as the story develops. Update. While numerous outlets have reported Fraser as playing the villain Firefly, it's also been reported that he may be playing the gangster Carmine Falcone. This is now actually not true. He is playing Firefly, but Falcone would have been even better for him, by the way. Another staple Batman villain character who was previously played by John Doman in Gotham series and Tom Wilkinson in Batman Begins. What? Oh, Falcone, right. I was going to say, he didn't play bloody Firefly. Did I miss that one version of Batman Begins? The character will next appear in 2022's The Batman, as played by actor John Turturro. More to follow as the story develops. Original story below. Brendan Fraser has been cast in the villain role, believed to be Firefly, for the Batgirl movie. Fraser has had a long and distinguished career in Hollywood, breaking out with the comedy smash Encino Man in 1992 and going on to star in a string of hits including The Mummy, George of the Jungle, Gods and Monsters and Bedazzled. Fraser dropped out of the limelight for a while. Of course, you're not going to tell us why, are you, Paul? It's all right, I've done that for you. But he has had a major resurgence of late, starring in DC's Doom Patrol series as Cliff Steele, as well as taking the lead in Darren Aronofsky's latest The Whale. He's back, big time, and I'm so happy for him. No one deserves this more than Brendon. And securing a role in Martin Scorsese's Killer of the Flower Moon with Leonardo DiCaprio. Absolutely deserved. Batgirl stars Leslie Grace as Barbara Gordon, daughter of Commissioner James Gordon, who dons the cape and cowl of the titular character in the HBO Max original live-action DCEU movie. J.K. Simmons, who played Gordon in Zack Snyder's Justice League, will return to the role alongside Grace for Bad Boys for Life directors Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah. The script for Batgirl is written by Christina Hodson, who also penned Birds of Prey and next year's The Flash. I'm not worried at all. I'm not concerned at all. I'm sure it's all going to be fine. I like Christina as a person. She's a right nerd and fangirl, so let's hope she gets these next scripts right. Now comes word via Deadline that Fraser is joining Batgirl in a villain role believed to be that of Firefly. Firefly is a criminal pyromaniac who uses fire and pyrotechnics to commit his crimes in Gotham City. He's often depicted as extremely violent and insane, carrying a blowtorch and wearing a winged fireproof suit. And we got some pictures of him in the comics here. Let me just show you quickly. He looks pretty cool, right? Fraser has worked steadily throughout his career, and although he's had highs and lows, the actor is experiencing a kind of Brendan Fraser renaissance. In the last few years, Fraser's popularity from his early works, especially the Mummy franchise, has given him a boost from fans that want to see more from the actor and prompted attention from the Hollywood A-list. Fraser has more than proven his talents and abilities as a dramatic, comedic and heroic lead, so seeing him in a proper DC villain role should be a fun challenge for the actor and a treat for his fans. Batgirl is currently slated to debut on HBO Max sometime in 2022. So again, well done Brendan Fraser. And Leslie Grace, she's lovely, she's welcomed Brendon with open arms, should I say, and that's really good. As I say, no one in Hollywood deserves this. This is Hollywood's nice guy. You know, I talk about the bad people in Hollywood lecturing us and putting us down. This is a good guy who won't be doing that thing. He's a proper actor, a private man who went through a terrible, terrible thing in this toxic industry that keeps on telling us it's the men harassing the women and the women are, you know, purer than the driven snow. Well, that's not true. What happened to Brendon is proof that anyone can be a harasser and an abuser, and it doesn't matter how they identify as. But I want again to congratulate Brendan Fraser for being cast not only in one DC show, now in a DCEU official movie, but let's also talk about this. This is how a multiverse strategy actually works, everyone. On one Earth, he's playing, is it Steel? I forgot what they call him again, in Doom Patrol. And on another Earth, the DCEU Earth 1, he plays Firefly. This is how it works. So some of you said, how can the same actor play two different roles? I've explained it to you, pie eaters at the back. This is how it works. This is how the multiverse works. You can see one person playing another person. That's how Brandon Routh plays Ray in Legends of Tomorrow, and also plays Superman on Crisis on Infinite Earths and in Superman Returns. The multiverse is here, everyone. Get used to it, because it's a brilliant concept. You really don't know what's going to happen, what twist is going to happen, and what revelations are going to come out from these DCEU directors. Take a listen to this. Cancelled Aquaman Spin-Off was actually a Black Manta movie, reveals James Wan. James Wan reveals that his scrapped Aquaman spin-off, The Trench, was actually about Black Manta, the villain portrayed by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. It sounds to me that he was going to be involved in The Trench movie, so that it would still be focused with The Trench. Maybe Black Manta would be fighting them or joining them or whatever. This sounds amazing, but why was it cancelled? All the other HBO Max spin-offs are happening. They're in production. Why didn't they do this? We'll discuss it after I read this article by Saeed Fadullah Hassani of Screen Rant. James Wan says his cancelled Aquaman spin-off, The Trench, was actually a movie about Black Manta. Wan directed Aquaman as his DCEU feature debut in 2018. The movie, which starred Game of Thrones Jason Momoa, served as a solo venture for the actors Arthur Curry as he sets out to take control of the Kingdom of Atlantis from his half-brother King Orm, Patrick Wilson, and save the surface world. Aquaman proved to be a bona fide hit at the box office, collecting $1 billion worldwide. It became the highest grossing film for the entire DC franchise, well, the DCEU, because the Joker movie made more than that. With its success, WB and DC Films naturally sought to expand the franchise. A sequel, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, was immediately confirmed, and in 2019 the spin-off movie The Trench was also put in development. Described as a horror-tinged expansion of the underwater world, Aquaman simply scratched the surface of The Trench, was being produced by Wan with Noah Gardner and Aidan Fitzgerald writing the screenplay. When WB announced its plans for the movie, it stated that The Trench would revolve around the bloodthirsty amphibious monsters that Arthur and Mira Amber Heard faced when they set out to sail in the middle of the ocean in Aquaman, a scene that is described as the movie's most riveting set piece. After the announcement, progress on the movie remained slow, and finally in April 2021, WB confirmed it wouldn't be moving forward with The Trench. Discussions about the film have since petered out, although now a new revelation seems to have reignited interest in the movie. Recently, while responding to a fan's comment on his Instagram post, James Wan revealed that the cancelled The Trench movie actually centred on Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's Aquaman villain Black Manta, David Kane. Basically, Wan had uploaded a bunch of photos to Instagram offering a look at Black Manta, his costume, ship and technology. Advanced gadgets, we may have to take a look at that in a minute. I didn't even know about this, as seen in Aquaman 2's BTS trailer at the DC Fandom. In his post, Wan described the character's Silver Age and New 52 inspirations at the same time, acknowledging the conscientious efforts and went into bringing the character to life. There were several comments on Wan's post, but the only one in particular asked if there were any plans for a Black Manta spin-off series. As Wan replied to the comment, he made the stunning disclosure about The Trench being a Black Manta movie. Take a look at Wan's post, as well as his conversation in the comments below. Wow! So this is what he put up. It absolutely looks beautiful, doesn't it? I can't wait to see him wearing it in the movie. Black Manta, played by the talented and badass Yahya, and his ship tech inspired by the aesthetic of the Silver Age and New 52. Thank you, Evans Art Comics. Months and months of meticulous detailing were spent on costume and production designs. Hashtag Aquaman 2, hashtag Lost Kingdom, hashtag Silver Age. Wow, so he's really going for this with comic book accuracy, which is great for the fans, isn't it? Comments. Will you be doing a Black Manta streaming series maybe? Creepy Puppet, which is who he is. That's who James Wan is on the internet. I'll let you in on a secret. The cancelled Trench spin-off movie was really going to be a secret Black Manta movie. Wow. Now, is he being serious or is he joking? You just don't know with these people, do you? Given the Trench's comic book origins and Black Manta's story in the comics, it's perceivable why and how the movie would have focused on the high seas mercenary. In the comics, the Trench is introduced as a tribe that had survived the fall of Atlantis and had adapted to living in the eponymous deep and narrow hole near the mid-Atlantic ridge. The Trench follows the wielder of the dead king's scepter, and although the wielder doesn't have any mystical control over them, they still take the person to be their leader as a tradition. This is one point in the comics where the scepter is stolen by Black Manta from a tomb, which enables him to rule over the tribe with an iron fist. Although Abdul-Mateen II's Black Manta did not receive a solo film, he is still expected to appear in a substantial role in Aquaman 2. At the moment, details on Black Manta's character arc in the upcoming sequel are unclear, but the newly revealed information about the Trench movie may now help fans figure out more about Abdul-Mateen II's role. Chronologically, the Trench was supposed to be set between Aquaman and Aquaman 2. Interesting. So if the movie had happened, it could have seen Black Manta assume his role as the leader of the Trench. This could have provided the essential backstory for the Black Manta in Aquaman 2 and made his incorporation into the film easier. But now, since the Trench isn't happening, it's possible that Wan has tweaked that story. Wan might also have left the room to open in Aquaman 2 to do the Trench movie about Black Manta later. Although this is something fans will only know for sure when the sequel premieres. Very interesting. When the Trench movie was cancelled, I said to you, they're going to use this story in the film. I think the cancellation of this isn't a Warner Brothers decision, people trying to blame Walter, because Walter hasn't canned any of the other stuff that's happening on HBO Max. And this is not even happening on HBO Max. I forgot about that. This was going to be a proper movie. I think this was going to be released through the theatrical system. I think they're going to use the Trench story for this is going to be Black Manta's story, I think, partially. What may happen is, or what they do by the end of it, you know, he steals the scepter and he ends up leading the Trench people or beings or whatever you want to call them, and that will lead either to Aquaman 3 or to his own spin-off there. What I think happened was that James just couldn't oversee over a movie that was going to be released just before, in between Aquaman 1 and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Obviously, it wasn't possible. He made the correct decision to focus on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But don't worry about this. This is not bad news. You'll either see all of this play out in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, or they'll touch on it and they'll continue Black Manta's story from the cancelled Trench movie in a spin-off or in Aquaman 3. So basically what I'm telling you is going to happen because it just makes total logical sense. And I just think the cancellation of this film was almost certainly a James Wan creative decision. So I've been covering the Ruby Rose situation and what she's been saying about WB and what WB have been saying about her in retaliation since the very beginning. And I promised you I would pick up on it whenever there are new developments, and there are today here on the dceu Daily. WB condemns Ruby Rose's allegations against Batwoman's Dougray Scott. Now there's a surprise. Warner Brothers condemns Ruby Rose's recent allegations of misconduct against her former Batwoman co-star and on-screen father, Dougray Scott, by Sarah Smith of Screen Rant. Warner Brothers has condemned Ruby Rose's allegations against her former Batwoman co-star, Dougray Scott. Rose once starred as the titular character in the CW series. Back when the show first premiered in 2019, she exited the series suddenly in May of 2020 and was replaced by Javicia Leslie, who took on the mantle of Batwoman for a new character named Ryan Wilder. In a string of recent Instagram posts, Rose accused Warner Brothers Television and a number of leading figures from the production of Batwoman of misconduct and inappropriate behaviour. Specifically, the Australian actress named producers Greg Berlanti and Sarah Schistler, along with showrunner Caroline Dries and Warner Brothers TV president Peter Roth, also singled out was her former on-screen father, Scott. When Rose described as a nightmare to work with, she alleges that he had once injured a female stunt double and would frequently become verbally abusive, specifically to female staff. Warner Brothers TV quickly issued a statement of their own which branded Rose's accusations as revisionist and countered that she had not been approached for season 2 due to complaints against her. Scott also responded to the allegations, which he absolutely and completely refuted. Now Warner Brothers TV has risen to Scott's defense, specifically in a fresh statement shared by The Wrap. The studio labels Scott a consummate professional, adding that he has never received any allegations of bullying or abuse against the actor. Well, that's it then. That means he's innocent, right? Warner Brothers instead calls Scott a leader on set. The statement also reiterates the studio's previous assertion that Rose was not asked to return for season 2 due to workplace complaints against her. Check out the full statement below. Wasn't Kate Kane's father killed off in season 2? Oh, am I wrong there? Convenient, isn't it, if that's true? We condemn the comments made by Ruby Rose about Dougray Scott. Warner Brothers has found Mr. Scott to be a consummate professional, never received any allegations against him of bullying or abusive behaviour on his part. Mr. Scott was greatly respected and admired by his colleagues and was a leader on the set. Sounds like he has left now, conveniently. Warner Brothers Television did not pick up Ruby Rose's option for an additional season because of multiple complaints about workplace behaviour that were extensively reviewed by the studio. So they're sticking to what they're saying. But interestingly enough, they're not refuting other, more serious allegations that Ruby's made. The latest statement indicates that the war of words between Rose and the Batwoman production is nowhere near over. Only yesterday, Rose was posting screenshots of emails to support her claims that a terrible work environment existed on the set of Batwoman. She also claimed to have even more damning evidence still to share, though she appeared to encourage Warner Bros. To deal with the matter privately. However, it appears with this latest response from the studio that this very public back and forth is only set to continue. Only time will tell, or how Rose will decide to respond to this latest retort, or we all know how. If past exchanges are any indication, the public might not be waiting long to see her reply, though Rose's previous emails made passing reference to Scott's alleged conduct during Batwoman, it appears Warner Brothers remains stoically unconvinced and is perhaps calling her bluff to produce further evidence against him. Well, that's not a good idea. Let me look. I'm going to say something about this actor afterwards. Of some former colleagues or witnesses, Rose might struggle to prove her accusations have legitimacy. Still, the studio made little reference to her other allegations, as I've just said, suggesting Warner Brothers could be attempting to minimise the negative press directed at Batwoman. Equally possible is the prospect that Warner Brothers isn't finished with its retaliation and could continue to address Rose's claims in future statements. They're just going to say the same thing. They don't have any evidence against her, although she did say she would not be intimidated by blackmail. Well, to be blackmailed, Ruby, they must have some dirt on you. Now that is interesting. Either way, both parties seem to have more to say. Absolutely, including Ruby. Now, what's the guy's name again, right? Let's get his name right. Dougray Scott, that's it. So Dougray Scott's a bit of a big deal. I mean, he's not a huge actor, but he was in Mission Impossible 2. He's been in a lot of prominent roles. He's been in Doctor Who. His career hasn't worked out as well as he wanted it to, but he's a pretty good actor and he's got a great screen presence. So I think there definitely is a clash of personalities here. Now, you've got Ruby Rose, who's also done a lot of work in big blockbuster A-list movies, and she still is, since she was removed herself from Batwoman. So her career is going very well. And anyone who tells you her career is failed since Batwoman is lying to you. This simply isn't true. Now, this situation with Dougray Scott actually isn't that important in terms of all the stuff that Ruby is saying. It's just two actors who have clashed. In terms of hurting a stunt person, you know, he could have been doing a stunt with a stunt double and something happened. Maybe he fell on her or something, and maybe he got angry and he shouted at her, right? I'm not saying that Ruby's not right about this guy, and Ruby clearly isn't perfect either, but I do take her alleged accusations very seriously, and I do believe Ruby. But this is not important. They've come back with the Dougray Scott stuff because she probably can't really prove much about that, and as I say, it's irrelevant. The Dougray Scott situation really doesn't matter. Listen, I've been on multiple sets because we work long hours. We work long hours. Here in Cyprus, I'm developing the first English-speaking dramas. You know, and you go on a set, there's people working 12-hour days because there's no relief for them, so for someone else to come in. I mean, the industry really needs to, you know, give someone 6-7 hours, then bring a relief in or something like that, but it doesn't happen. And of course, you can't relieve an actor playing a role, but I'm talking about, you know, the kind of broader crew here, because they're being stretched for very little money as well. It's something the unions need to look into. But the set can be a very shouty environment. There's no way you can't have shouting. Sometimes you can't hear yourself think, and you do have to raise your voice, but it's stressful. Think about a film or an episode, your favourite episode of a TV show. Imagine the work that goes into making it look so beautiful and the performances being so great. Everyone works so hard to get it to that standard. And that means people get stressed like you do in your jobs. So people, it's not like your, you know, Blu-ray extra features where they're kissing each other's arse. That's just bullshit. People work hard. They're in each other's company, you know, smelling each other's odour, if you like, day in, day out. It gets stressful. People don't literally hate each other on a set, but they vent. They get it out of their system. And that's okay as long as you don't cross the line. So I don't know if Dougray Scott crossed the line. But ultimately, this situation is irrelevant. What is relevant is Ruby Rose making the accusations she has about the on-set conditions, and I totally believe her. She will have more. She will release, I promise you, more today on her Instagram story. So if you're interested in this situation, and I hope you are, because people being put in danger, we've seen what happened with that poor lady who, you know, well, I don't want to go into it in case YouTube don't like my language, but you know what happened to her. She lost her life. She should right now be holding her child. Instead, she lost her life as a DP. You know, that's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. And they call it the most dangerous job. It shouldn't be a dangerous job. I mean, it's one thing to have a crane, and maybe if a crane fell on her by accident, I mean, I'd still be devastated for her. and would be questioning the safety measures, but when someone's got a loaded gun on a set and someone dies because of loaded gun, that's inconceivable. I really want to make a documentary about the great history, the iconic history of Hollywood, and talk about the death of Hollywood in the 21st century. Hollywood has always hated its talent and treated its crew and cast members and all the grunts who work for them like shit, while publicly pretending to be kind and compassionate people. That's not the reality of the situation. Well, now, not only do they hate the grunts and the actors and everyone that works for them, and they treat them like fucking slaves, now they hate their public. Now they hate their consumer as well. So the entertainment industry, the Western entertainment industry, isn't long for this world, and it will be taken over by foreign language entertainment. The English-speaking entertainment industry has become a pale kind of image of itself. And we carry on this conversation because Screen Rant have done an interesting article. Of course, this is by Stephen M. Colbert, who's going to take this back to the Snyderverse situation and what happened to Zack Snyder. So there is an agenda here, but let's go through it. WB needs to fix their repeated failure to resolve claims of toxicity. We'll get through. I'm going to give you a strong reaction to this after I read the article. Warner Brothers has failed to create a culture that prevents or resolves toxic workplace issues, leading to multiple high-profile complaints. You could literally say this about any industry. You could be working in Kentucky Fried Chicken or a supermarket and say, oh, it's toxic here, we're always arguing. That is life. That is the human condition anyway. By Stephen M. Colbert of Screen Rant. Ruby Rose recently spoke out on their experiences as the star of the CW's Batwoman, becoming the newest high-profile case of alleged workplace toxicity at Warner Brothers. Rose starred as Batwoman for the first season before being replaced, and their new claims detailed complaints about on-set safety, behaviour from executives, and more despite claims against Rose's credibility, including a former castmate publicly siding with the studio. It's still an unfortunate contribution to a pattern of culture issues at Warner Media and its subsidiaries. I will react to this because he is, as a Zack Snyder fan, he's got an agenda here, and I will expose that agenda. Hollywood is full of conflict over treatment of cast and crew, from the Me Too movement to Scarlett Johansson's recent lawsuit against Disney to the recent near strike from the IATSE over working conditions. The recent tragic shooting death on Alec Baldwin's Rust gives another frightening glimpse of how poor conditions can be for some in the industry. Unfortunately, it seems a number of high-profile complaints of workplace toxicity and safety have come from Warner Media, and the company's process for handling these situations leaves a lot to be desired. There's always a debate in the public discourse surrounding these accusations, primarily focusing on whether the claims are true or not. But eventually the mere presence of repeated claims becomes an issue of its own. When this happens, the questions start to shift from are they telling the truth to why does this keep happening? Warner Brothers has a pattern of high-profile complaints. The past few years have seen a number of examples of toxic culture have gained the attention of the public. One of the biggest cases came with former Warner Brothers CEO Kevin Sugihara being exposed for trading roles to an actress, Charlotte Kirk, in exchange for sex. A 2019 expose in The Hollywood Reporter revealed text messages exchanged between Kirk and director-producer Brett Ratner, his partner at Rat Pack Entertainment, James Packer, and Sugihara, showing negotiations for roles and auditions, also confirming Kirk and Sugihara had a sexual relationship. Nah, really? Shortly after, Warner Media CEO John Stankey announced Sugihara's departure. Right. Sex of favours is as old as the crucifixion of Christ. It still happens. While we're talking right now, a very attractive young woman is doing it with some director or producer to get a role. No one's forcing them to do this, but they're quite happy to do it, right? Because ultimately you can walk out that door and you can say, I'm not doing this. I'm better than this. I'd rather not be famous. But of course they're so desperate to be famous, they do it. So it's absolutely immoral. But here's my opinion. As a woman who wants to do this, That's up to you. If you want to, exchange sexual favours for fame, that's up to you. Now, as long as it's not a situation where it's sexual misconduct or you're being forced, then at the end of the day, you're making a free decision, aren't you? So, and of course, this woman, Charlotte, nothing, at the end of the day, Kevin Sujihara was in a big position. And of course, I will have to say, you shouldn't be exchanging sex for favours. It's bad because all the best talent should rise to the top. But of course, that's not how the Western English-speaking entertainment industry works. The cream doesn't rise to the top. Let me explain to you quickly how the entertainment industry actually works, right? Basically, if your daddy's famous, you get to work in the industry, just like Ron Howard's daughter. The only reason she's directing The Mandalorian and doing other stuff is because daddy put in a good word. Basically, it's all about DNA. If you've got the right blood type, the doors of the golden gates of Hollywood open for you. If you're an outsider, you'll be very, very lucky to make it. That's it. That's how Hollywood works. There isn't a dream that anyone can walk through those doors and make it. I've tried it. And I saw a lot of people who didn't deserve their roles and their promotions as producers and directors get roles because they had the right DNA. This is what Hollywood is. But also, to be fair, it's also what all big corporations do. This is how the world works. Is it fair? No. But it's been going on for a very long time. Justice League, its own collection of issues, all leading back to Zack Snyder's departure. During post-production, Snyder and WB had faced a number of creative conflicts over the course of production. But after experiencing a family tragedy, Snyder stepped down and the studio made sweeping changes to the filming reshoots, during which time a whole new crop of on-set complaints arose. Right. Warner Brothers were within their rights to say to Snyder, we don't want to make the movie the way you want to make it. Goodbye. If you don't want to change, goodbye. I wanted him to complete his arc, I did, and I wanted to see his Justice League back in 2017, but the studio pays the money. And if the studio doesn't like what you're doing, whether that's right or wrong, in a consumer's opinion, that's their right. After Justice League, Ray Fisher has been the most outspoken, accusing Warner Brothers of racism and toxic work environment, naming numerous people involved in production and executives at WB. And contends the studio didn't take him seriously to the point that he had to speak out publicly multiple times to prompt an investigation. An issue he's still pressing since Warner Brothers hasn't made the results of the investigation public, and never will. Most of the rest of the main cast has spoken out too. What? Oh, yeah. What have they said? I know Ben Affleck said a couple of things, only because it's safe to do so now. Gal Gadot's only talking about her situation with Whedon because he's been outed. The only person who can take any credit from all of this is Ray Fisher, please. Spoken out. 2. The situation was so bad, Ben Affleck attributed it as the reason he walked away from the director's chair on his solo Batman movie. You see, he didn't walk away from the Batman because of that. They didn't like his vision. And he was driven away. He was suffering with mental health issues, alcoholism, and he moved away. He wasn't being bullied or tortured. They were giving him a hard time because they didn't like his vision. It was too dark for them. But they didn't do anything in terms of toxicity to Ben Affleck. Before leaving the role altogether, I showed somebody the Batman script and they said, I think the script is good. I also think you'll drink yourself to death if you go through what you just went through again. Now, yes, Justice League, the reshoots were terrible. Whedon was a terrible director. He didn't treat his cast and crew properly. We know that. But he was also under a lot of pressure. We should also remember that. And this is what's not been discussed. They got a director they didn't want. Their mate Zack Snyder left. I believe that the Justice League cast and crew, that was Snyder's cast and crew, treated Whedon as badly as he treated them. So I think it's a mutual situation, but no one's going to tell you that apart from me. You just went through again. Gal Gadot also had a bad experience with Whedon recently, saying, you're dizzy because you can't believe this was just said to you. And if he says it to me, then obviously he says it to many other people. And that's interesting, but again, was Gal Gadot giving some back? Was she making his life difficult as well as he making her life difficult as well? Well, he's not going to come out. He just wants to stay quiet until this goes away so he can reclaim his career again. This is what they do. Jason Momoa backed Ray Fisher up. Serious stuff went down. It needs to be investigated. People need to be held accountable. Even Snyder, despite having left the production, has spoken out about his treatment by the studio. It was cool to do the Snyder Cut of Justice League, and that was fun and everything, but Warner Brothers still tortured me the whole time for whatever reason. They can't help it. I don't know why I'm such a fucking pain in their ass, because I'm not trying to be, honestly. Right, Zack? Again, I love you, Zack Snyder, I do, because this is a propaganda piece. This is not about Ruby Rose or toxic behaviour. This is about a Snyder fan trying to put this back in the public eye. It's not going to happen. Anyway, Zack, you're a great director who had a vision. I love your fucking DCEU vision. I love you, man. You're a good bloke. But Warner Brothers had every right to say, we don't like this, mate. We're giving you the money. That's absolutely up to them. Then when you came back, you and Warner Brothers didn't get on it again. But at the end of the day, you and Ray Fisher were exposing all this information. And I respect Ray. I respect Ray for forcing the investigation. That was right and proper. And the rest of these fucking cowards did nothing while Ray did everything. I respect that. But then you were doing stuff like, you know, bringing people back for reshoots. They told you they didn't want you to shoot anything extra, and you still did it. They told you not to put in a Green Lantern, and you did it, Zack. So in a lot of ways, Zack, you're just to blame for some of this, as they are. So it's, you know, it's half a dozen of one and half a dozen of the other as far as I'm concerned. But I do love Zack Snyder, and I'm not here to get at him. But again, you know, I don't think anyone walks on water, and I will be balanced and honest about my opinions when they come through to me. In May 2021, a BuzzFeed News report cited 10 former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres show alleging a toxic workplace of racism, fear and intimidation. The former employees placed some of the responsibility on DeGeneres herself. Now, it's really funny because Ellen's one of these kind and compassionate people publicly, and it just goes to show you she was outed as well. And I think it's great seeing these people being outed because it shows you the kind of people they really are. But most of the blame was directed at executive producers and other senior managers. A Warner Media investigation into the show led Warner Brothers to issue a statement saying, even though not all of the allegations were corroborated, we are disappointed that the primary findings of the investigation indicated some deficiencies related to the show day-to-day management. Shortly after, multiple producers were fired, and then in May 2021, DeGeneres announced that the show's 19th season would be its last. Now, this is very interesting, because they were very, very happy to out the investigation results of the DeGeneres show, but they weren't happy to be publicly come out about what was going on the Justice League reshoot set. That's probably why the DeGeneres show was made by another company owned by Warner Brothers subsidiary, so they were happy to out them, but they weren't happy to out what was going on in their own company, and no big organisation would have outed themselves either. The most recent case is Ruby Rose. In a series of Instagram posts, Rose attacked Warner Brothers over a toxic environment on the set of the CW's Batwoman. In the post, Rose made accusations against producers, co-star Dougray Scott and former head of Warner Brothers TV, Peter Roth, alleging inappropriate behaviour, abusive behaviour and unsafe working conditions, particularly for stunt performers, including their self, particularly after the surgery to resolve their spinal injury. Warner Brothers Television described Rose's accusations as revisionist history, claiming Rose was fired due to multiple complaints about workplace behaviour after an internal probe. Batwoman actor Cameron Johnson also referred to Rose's claims as a lot of lies. However, it's important to note Rose's complaints reference a factual history of severe injuries on the Batwoman set. That is important. The highlighted claims all cite some similar complaints about toxic culture, but most notably, they aren't all isolated to a particular group of executives, departments, or subsidiaries from DC Films, to Turner Sports to Warner Brothers Television to the CW executives, are continually blamed for their fostering a toxic culture, or allowing the toxic culture to exist, with signs of trouble extending all the way to the office of the former CEO of Warner Brothers. Not all these situations have gone unresolved by Warner Brothers. Gal Gadot says her complaints about Joss Whedon were handled quickly. The investigation into the Ellen DeGeneres show was severe enough to result in the departure of multiple producers and lead directly or indirectly to the show ending. And while not related to toxic workplace complaints, the studio was quick to resolve many of the complaints over the decision to release all their 2021 theatrical films to HBO Max, providing a much quicker and less dramatic resolution than Scarlett Johansson found at the Disney. Exactly. Still, the company's responses in other cases have raised some serious concerns, often making the situation worse. Ray Fisher's very public struggle with Warner Media followed multiple attempts to resolve issues internally, both during and after production, leading him to accuse DC Films president of Walter Hamada attempting to block an investigation. As I said before, the outing of Walter Hamada by Ray was wrong. I respect him for his other stuff. Jesus Christ, I watch him in the Snyder Cut every night. The guy is a phenomenal young actor. But the outing of Walter Hamada was wrong, because Walter Hamada was just following orders. He's just trying to do his job. Simple as that. So I won't take any blasphemy against Walter. Warner Media issued a statement accusing Fisher of refusing to work with investigators. But Fisher provided email transcripts with his team and the Screen Actors Guild stating he did meet with investigators but didn't move forward due to concerns of impartiality, since the investigator was handpicked by Warner Brothers instead of a third-party investigator. Eventually, Fisher and Warner Media identified an investigator both sides could agree on, and Warner Media claims remedial action was taken in response to the investigation findings. But Fisher still wasn't satisfied, as the company didn't make any of the findings or corrective actions public, and wouldn't apologise to him for using official press releases to publicly undermine his credibility by accusing him of being uncooperative, or apologise to any of the cast and crew involved in the investigation, specifically calling out Walter Hamada. This is my issue with it. Why is he so against Hamada when Hamada is clearly just following fucking orders? Ray, would you... that's a dumb question. You would give up your job over this, but Walter Hamada isn't. He's a career person. He wants his job. He has to follow the orders. They didn't want Jeff Johns outed, any other people. They just wanted Joss Whedon to be outed. That was it. And at the end of the day, Walter Hamada just echoed what they told him to echo. So, but Walter's an easy target, and now all of the Snyderverse fans and the Ray Fisher fans are attacking Walter Hamada as a bad DC film president. That isn't the case, and that isn't true. That will be proved in 2022 and beyond. Due to Warner Media's refusal to be more transparent with the investigation's findings, Fisher has said he won't participate in any productions Walter Hamada is involved in unless he issues an apology to the participants in the Justice League investigation. In response, Warner Brothers removed Fisher from The Flash. No, you've said yourself he refuses to be involved in any production involving Walter Hamada. So how can he be in The Flash? It's not Warner Brothers who removed Ray Fisher, it's Ray Fisher who removed himself from The Flash, using Fisher's statement to claim he left the project himself. That's what happened. Even though Fisher says no form of resignation was given. No, mate, you just came out publicly and said you don't want to be in any production involving Walter Hamada. What do you expect them to do? Whether or not Fisher was fired as retaliation, WB removing him without him providing a formal resignation invites accusations that it was retaliation and once again muddies the waters on what actually happened. Well, you see, he's just using the Ruby Rose situation as a propaganda piece to bring all this stuff back up. That at the end of the day, the guy says, he refused to go into fucking work. How can he be in it if he's refusing to be in it? What are they supposed to do? Ridiculous. At the end of the day, much of this could have been avoided if Warner Brothers and Walter Hamada took Fisher seriously from the beginning before he went public, nearly 2 years after Justice League was released, after multiple attempts by Fisher to launch an investigation accusing him of being uncooperative, true or not. It also an unnecessarily aggressive move, especially while simultaneously refusing to provide more transparency over the results of the investigation, which could either corroborate or disprove Fisher's claims. On top of that, Fisher's request for an official apology from Hamada doesn't sound like a complicated request to accommodate. Well, maybe, mate. Walter Hamada doesn't think he's done anything wrong and was just following fucking orders. He didn't want to lose his job, especially considering Warner Media already acknowledged some level of wrongdoings by saying remedial action had been taken following the investigation. That's all they wanted to say. No one can dictate to a company as large as this how they conduct themselves in terms of reacting to an investigation. The reaction to Ruby Rose is equally concerning for a multi-billion-dollar company to issue a statement accusing Rose of revisionist history. Leans more towards personal attack than a measured PR response, and if Warner Brothers has the documentation to prove their claims that Rose was the one responsible for unacceptable on-set behaviour, a little transparency into that process would provide a much cleaner response. Also, even if Rose was a problem on the Batwoman set, that doesn't mean everyone else is innocent of contributing to a problem culture, or that the known on-set safety issues aren't also a problem. WB's response only makes the circumstance more concerning, especially because it collectively dismisses Rose's claims as revisionist history, when some of them surrounded already confirmed cases of injury on the Batman set. Fisher and Rose also both made similar claims of being forced to parrot a narrative for the studio, whitewashing the narrative both actors would later try to contradict. Rose was asked to make a video announcing their withdrawal from their planned Comic-Con appearance when it was the show's producers who refused to alter the schedule to allow attendance. Even more troubling, while Ray Fisher was going through his on-set trouble during Justice League reshoots, he says he was given a script praising Whedon and the reshoot process, a statement that would later be used against him after he made his complaints public. Actors lie all the time for studios, usually in cases of actors denying they were cast in a secretive roles or to protect spoilers. But asking Fisher to publicly praise an environment he was already combating behind the scenes doesn't look good. In a form of protest, Fisher marked his entrance to Comic-Con by tearing open his t-shirt to reveal an I Heart Zack Snyder shirt. Now we know what that was all about. While much of the narrative surrounding these cases will focus on whether or not the particular allegations are accurate, a focus Warner Media's responses have encouraged. The specific details and individual accounts of what happened aren't the whole problem here. While Hollywood as a whole isn't regarded as the most wholesome place in the world, really? The disproportionate number of claims against Warner Media are a major red flag. Anyway, I'm going to react in a minute. Whether they're true or false, why is this a pattern across, and why are they always so counterproductive in their defense? In Fisher's case, on the interview with the Hollywood Reporter, revealed Warner Media's head of communications was furious at the response, attacking his credibility, telling Fisher it was based on third-hand information and the department was responding emotionally afterward. She made it 100% crystal clear to everyone in the entire Warner Brothers communications office organisation that not a goddamn word can be said about Ray Fisher. Both Ruby Rose, but he doesn't talk about the rest of that Hollywood Reporter article where other people like Jeff Johns were responding with very, very constructive things and, really defending themselves in a great way as well. You see, but it's all one-sided with this man. But I'm not talking about Ray, I'm talking about this journalist. But both Ruby Rose and Ray Fisher named specific names and events in their complaints, and Warner Brothers' response has been to simply claim they're lying without offering any additional information for the public to evaluate. Ray Fisher managed to finally get an investigation underway that met his terms, and Warner Brothers claims they took remedial action but hasn't specified what that action was. Although Joss Whedon departed his HBO Max show The Nevers around the same time, Fisher's recent complaints have been that he disagrees with the findings of the investigation, but that Warner Brothers won't publicise the findings. It's understandable why WB would be resistant to these demands for legal or PR reasons, or even if the findings are in their favour, it could negatively impact the business. But withholding the information leaves Fisher out to dry when it's already confirmed to at least partially back up Fisher's claims. This behaviour rapidly erodes their credibility when one accusing Fisher of lying, yet they're refusing to divulge investigation findings that say no, especially when it's not an isolated incident. Any corporate environment is expected to have process and procedures in place to both prevent and resolve these issues. Yet we're seeing repeated claims of employees having harmful experiences, corporate failure to resolve the complaints getting reported publicly, and Warner Media responding poorly in the press. Whether Warner Media is guilty of inciting incidents or not, these things keep happening under their watch. It's just as much their job to protect themselves against false accusations as it is to resolve real accusations, and based on their behaviour with many of these complaints, it's hard to know where the breakdown is occurring. Big companies like Warner Media face a multitude of cases, both frivolous and true. It may be unreasonable for them to take drastic action to publicly resolve every single one. But if the culture is breeding these complaints and the internal systems aren't finding amicable solutions resulting in these high-profile accusations of toxicity, there is at least one major breakdown in the process. Likely more with the oncoming merger of Discovery. Warner Media, hopefully the new company, will seek to create better safeguards and curate a culture that not only prevents these issues from happening, but also properly resolves them when they do. Yeah, I'm sure Warner Discovery will try and solve all these issues and become a better, cleaner company, but after all, it's still entertainment and there will still be issues. Right, and so this journalist, who's got me blocked on Twitter, by the way, who's probably done the longest Screen Rant article I've ever read. I read a lot of Screen Rant articles to you. They're very short, aren't they? I didn't even realise it was that long, but once I started, I wanted to finish it. Basically, this is about an agenda. Because this is not about Ruby Rose. This guy did this article to put the Ray Fisher investigation situation and how Snyder was treated back into the central ground. It's nothing to do with Ruby. He doesn't care about Ruby. What we're talking about right now is Ruby Rose's situation and the serious allegations that I believe that she's put forward and exposed. This is not a Warner Media problem. This is an English-speaking entertainment media problem. They treat people like shit. They treat people like commodities. They always have and they always will. Not only do they treat people like commodities, they now blatantly hate the people who make the money. You and me, the straight male. They hate us. Even though we buy the merch, we go and watch their films multiple times, we make the money, but we're public enemy number one and they want to drive us away from watching their films and bring in people who won't support their content. This is the death of the entertainment industry. We're now seeing what they really are while they lecture publicly on Twitter and talk about kindness and compassion. This is the industry we are putting money into. I will not stop putting money into this industry because I like some of the stuff they make and they work damn hard to make it. But at the end of the day, if the English-speaking Western entertainment industry wants to continue without losing its consumer, because we are the king, we are your bosses, whether you like it or not. Without our money, you have absolutely nothing. So do better. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please comment, subscribe, like, hit that notification so you never miss this perfection. And I will see you for more DCEU Daily tomorrow. Jesus Christ, I don't know if you noticed, my voice is really dying here. I will see you tomorrow.